Glad to see all of you here again tonight. Have a very simple lesson tonight. So simple, in fact, that we do not have a PowerPoint. Somebody was too lazy or distracted or something to do that this week. I was told by my wife, who has to go to work tonight, that this needs to be short so she can hear it all and make it to work on time. It's not really true. I'm just using that as an excuse in case it does go short. I wanted to try something a little bit different tonight. I don't generally chase rabbits. I normally know exactly where I'm going with everything, but I do have a very good idea of where I'm going. But depending on how many rabbits I chase tonight will depend on how short or how long this goes. But I wanted to start out tonight talking about the influences in our lives. Start out by sharing two verses with you. First being 1 Corinthians 15:33. It's one that you've heard over and over again, probably a lot in your younger years, in your teenage years, when you were being told about picking friends. It says, "Do not be conceived. Bad company corrupts good morals." It could say evil company corrupts good habits, depending on your version, depends on what it's going to say. And it's one of those things. Sometimes we zone out to verses like this. It's the same thing as hearing a cliche. But one of the things that I've learned the older I've gotten is that cliches are cliches for a reason. The verses that you hear a lot for a reason. And that reason is because there is a lot of truth to it. It doesn't matter how many times I say it. It doesn't matter how many times any adult says it, or even once you become an adult, how many of your friends and family members say it. This is true, and the majority of the time people zone out hearing this verse and hearing the fact that the way that people act who are around you, how they act, directly affects you in a lot of ways. And then the same can be said in the reverse. You see Proverbs 27:17, "As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the contingents of his friends." So just like being around people who are not so good can corrupt you, people who are Christians, being around them can lift you up and make you even stronger. It is such a simple concept, but it really stresses how important it is to pick good friends, to pick the people that you're going to spend your time with. And I tell the kids sometimes that I kind of feel bad for them, because I remember the people that I had to be around in high school. If you might remember, your friends are kind of picked for you in high school. The people that you go to school with, those are the people that you're hanging around. And unfortunately, some of you have a job where you have to be around certain people also. I have to be around Josh all the time, so pray for him. But, you sometimes don't get to choose who you're around, but the people that you do get to choose, make sure that those people are good people. Make sure those are the kind of people that lift you up. Because just like a bad friend can bring you down, a good friend can bring you up. And one of the things that's important to remember is, you've heard it said over and over again, we are in the world but not of the world. Sometimes you have to be that good friend to someone who is not so good. We are called to go out and evangelize and to bring people to Christ, so sometimes we have to be around people who maybe are not the kind of people that are going to sharpen you. They're the people who might bring you down a little bit. But you go to them to try to bring them up, but you have to be very careful around those people, and you have to understand that you have to be strong enough to be around that person and to maintain your faith. But there's no way to go out and evangelize without going into the homes of sinners and to go to people who do not have Christ like you do. You go and you see who Jesus spent his time with. And it was not the people that you would think he would have. And he got a lot of flack for that. But it just shows us that sometimes to spread the word, we have to be around those people. But I look at this and hang with me here. It makes me think a lot of my mother. Reason being, Megan, they have a very good relationship, but she gets very irritated at my mother about this. She doesn't eat anything unless it's green. My mother is a health nut. She's X amount of years old, won't share that. but she's run a half marathon. She still does triathlon. She is a very healthy person, and you can tell it by what she eats. Me, on the other hand, I have never cared about what I eat in my life, and it is starting to show. And I mean, you can definitely tell when you put good in, you get good out. Like I said, my mother is X amount of years old, and she looks like she's about 10 to 15 years younger. I'm 25-year-old, and I feel like I'm 60. And it's because I don't eat well. It's because when you put good in, you get good out. And it comes down to the people that you're around and also the things that you put into your head. A lot of times, there are certain questions as a youth minister that you are going to be asked over and over and over again. And one of those is, is it a sin if a bad thing pops into your head? Can you control what you think about? And to an extent, yes, you can. Not entirely, but if you listen to music, if you watch shows that every other word, every other sentence is just filthy and has cuss words, when you stub your toe, that's more than likely what's going to pop into your head. That kind of stuff is what's going to happen to you. So it's not just in what you eat, it's what you're around, it's the people you're around, it's the things that you watch and listen to. If you listen to bad things, then bad things eventually will come out of your mouth. If you listen to bad things, then bad things are more than likely going to pop into your head in situations where they should not. They never should, but we have to make a very conscious effort to watch the things that go into our head, the things that we see, the things that we listen to. And Josh made a statement talking about a missionary. Y'all might remember it. It was I heard it, I was like, man, that's really good. I'm going to steal that. So this is me stealing that. But he said, a bird can land on your head, but it doesn't have to make a nest there. We're going to be in the world. We're going to be around people saying bad things regardless of whether we want to or not. Me and Megan were in Nashville this weekend for one of our college friends' weddings, and I went Friday night to a trampoline park with a bunch of 25-year-olds. So that was an interesting experience because it was us and a bunch of little kids. And, we had 3 or 4 youth ministers with us on that trip. And we had little kids there who were 6, 7 years old. And some of the things that they were saying, it was very discouraging. And some of the things we heard their parents say just standing there. So, I go to a place with a group of my friends who I know are Christians, and I have never heard say words like that in my life, and we still hear it. So you're going to have places and times where you hear those things and you really don't want to. But those things can pop into your head, but you don't give them a place to live. You don't entertain those thoughts when they come into your head. And, that again, like I said, might chase some rabbits, and that is a little bit of a rabbit because where we're starting out here is the influence of the people that you are around. And the biggest influence in your life, we really want to be the people in this room, the people that are here. You want to have Christian influences, you want to have Christian friends, and you want to have Christian love. Nathan read for us 1 Corinthians 13:13, where it tells us faith, hope, and love. Of these 3, the greatest is love. For a long time, I wondered, why is love the greatest? I did some research on it, and I had someone explain it to me in just the best way possible. When we die, there will be no need for faith. Faith is believing in something that you might not have seen. We will have seen God. There'll be no need for faith. Hope is looking forward to something that is better than now. Hope is looking forward to something. We will be looking forward to nothing in heaven, but what will remain is love. And we talk about 1 Corinthians 13, or all the chapter as the chapter of love, but if you look through that, it's talking so much about things that will pass away, things that will be done away with. And it talks about the miraculous things that these people can do. And it said eventually those things will be gone away with. But the thing that will last, out of all of these things that he lists in 1 Corinthians 13, love will continue on. So why is love the greatest? Because love will be eternal. We will always have love. So the people in this room are people that we should we should love. And that's something you've probably heard a preacher say before, that when they're speaking to themselves as much as anybody. And I kind of make jokes all the time that I'm a heartless person, and there's a little bit of truth to that. It is hard for me sometimes to show emotion and to show that love that Christians should show to each other, but that is such an important thing. And you look at the difference in the law of Moses, the old law, and the law today. They had so many physical things that they had to do. They had to wash their hands, they had to do this, they had to sacrifice animals, they had so many physical things that they need to do, but the new law is so much about your heart. Is your heart where it needs to be? And of course there are other things that you have to look at alongside with that, but Christianity is a heart religion. And we hear, I hear a lot of times people talk about feel-good sermons. I hear people talk about where a preacher gets up and they just tell people what they want to hear. And there's a lot of churches out there today. Had a lot of conversations this weekend about community churches. And you might have a general idea of what pops into your head when you hear those words. And to me, I think a rock show and some smoke fog going on and the preacher coming in on a zip line, that's happened before. I've heard that as a real story. But that's the first thing that comes into my mind. And it's an entirely feel-good sermon. And we run away from that. Maybe we might hear that this denomination does this denomination has that, and we run away from it as fast as we can. And sometimes we should, but sometimes we need to take a step back and say, maybe they're doing something good. Maybe they are doing something right. Now, most of what they do, if it is against what God has told us in the Scripture, it is wrong. That is important to remember. I think sometimes when people start trying to do that, they forget that God has said certain things, and we have to go by those things. But we run so far away from any kind of emotion, I think, that is not how God intended for us to be. And I think one of the reasons why is because we might have seen these other churches that are emotional in the way that they worship, and we want to get as far away from that. Maybe they go overboard. Maybe they do things the wrong way. But, chew the meat and spit out the bones. All that to come back to John 4, where Jesus is talking to the Samaritan woman, and then we get to verse 24 where he says, "True worshipers will worship me in spirit and in truth." We heard that talked about a little bit this morning. But in the church, we have truth down. We've got that down pretty good. We know the truth and we worship in truth, and that is a wonderful thing. And that's half the equation. The other half is in spirit. And I have never questioned anyone at Ripley whether that is the case or not, but I have been to churches where you walk in and it's kind of dead. Obviously, I don't really buy into the supernatural stuff. I don't buy into ghosts or demons, anything like that. But I do think when something terrible has happened somewhere, it might leave kind of a bad feeling. You hear about people walking into concentration camps and the feeling that they get when they walk into the concentration camp, and it's just eerie almost. And just like we started out talking about how bad company corrupts good morals, you have the same thing for iron and sharpening iron. When great things are happening in God's church, I think you can walk into a building and almost feel the love in that building. And I'll tell you, the first time that me and Megan walked into Ripley, we had no idea what to expect. We knew Brad and April went here, and that's all we knew. And it felt wonderful to walk in those doors. And I think that's something that you don't just hear and you say, okay, you hear and you improve on it, you do better on it. But it was so encouraging to be here. And I think that's something that we can never forget, that we have to worship in truth and spirit. We have to show that love to one another to the point where when people come here, they feel that. They want to come back. Studies have shown that I think that the number is 10 seconds. People know within 10 seconds of walking into a church whether they will visit it again or not. So what do people feel when they walk in the building? That sounds like a crazy idea, but in 10 seconds, that's pretty much what they're going off of. I get on things every once in a while where I'll have an idea in my head, and everything I think of continues to go back to that. And I wrote a article a few weeks ago about the difference in knowledge and wisdom. You've all heard the adage that knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, wisdom is not putting it into a fruit salad. So to me, it's the difference in knowing something and applying that something. So we know that as a church we are to love one another. We know as a church that we are supposed to support one another and to be there for one another. But the wisdom part comes in. How do we apply that? The wisdom part comes in for us to actually live that out day in and day out. And that can be difficult at times. And one of the things that I look to, this is a slightly strange comparison, but you look at James 1:4 where it says, "But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." And the one word that I want to point out there is the second word in that sentence, let. Allow it to happen. Because what I see that is patience can be in you, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work the way that it is supposed to. I think about, people can sit in front of Disney movies all day long, but if they decide they're not going to cry, then they're not going to be moved at all by that Disney movie. But if they let themselves actually watch it and feel what they should, they're going to cry because Disney's wonderful. Sometimes. Nobody laughed at that, thank you. But to some extent, we have to allow things to help us or to hurt us. So if you go into a situation knowing, going back to the influence that people can have on us, if you go into a situation knowing that, okay, I'm about to go into this situation where people are probably going to be doing this, people are probably going to be saying this, but I have to go because it's my job, then chances are they're going to affect you a lot more than if you walk in and don't even think about what's going on. And if you go into a situation and you say, oh man, these people are just so positive, they're going to annoy me all day because they're just so happy and everything, chances are, yeah, they're going to annoy you. But if you go in and you say, you know what, these are some good people. They're a little bit more upbeat than I am. That's a good thing. I'm gonna let that affect me. So with all of this that we're talking about, all this love that we're talking about, if you don't allow it to affect you, if you don't allow that to change you, then it won't. So allow that to take its course. I've heard it said, and I don't know, some people might not like this analogy, but I've heard it said that the people who show up on Sunday morning, that's your JV team. People who show up on Sunday night, that's your varsity team. So this is the varsity team that we're talking to. And if that is the comparison, you look to your varsity team for leadership. These are the people that should start this. If it was not happening, you look to your people on Sunday night. It is, but this is the group of people that goes a step further. We heard about the Good Samaritan going second and third and fourth mile, as he put it. And this is the leadership. And you have to have the top starting it, and it trickles down. That's how anything gets started. That's how anything works. So this is the group of people that shows love. And one of the things that I've heard a lot recently, and I've said before, I pay too much attention to politics. I really need to stop because every time I do, it just upsets me. But I've heard people talk about toxic masculinity. And most of what they're saying is really dumb. It just is. But one of the things that they talk about is the inability to show any kind of affection. And it's kind of like what I was talking about. We run so far away from some things. Maybe we should take a step back and say, okay, what are they doing right? Let's get rid of what they're doing wrong, but what are they doing right? And I think this is one that most of what they're saying is not good. Most of what they're saying we shouldn't pay much attention to. But this, and like I said, this is something I have to work on. This is something that I'm preaching to myself on. I've talked before about the 5 love languages. Megan's love language receiving is words of affirmation. And I had to tell myself when we got married that I'm going to have to stop sometimes and do away with the sarcasm, do away with the jokes, and be serious and give her words of affirmation. And I think that's something, going from place to place, I've noticed that you can go from town to town, and the personality of the town is much different. And a lot of people in this area in Mississippi, I think, are very sarcastic. I don't know, you might have had different experiences, but when I've gone farther out away from Mississippi, the less sarcastic some people get. But I think, I know I use sarcasm as a way to cover up emotions a lot of times. And to an extent, okay, but if it's stopping you from showing people that the love that you should show them as a Christian, then it's something that we need to work on. It's something that I need to work on. So it's like I said, I know I've chased some rabbits. I've been a little bit random tonight, but the idea is that the people in this room are the people that you should spend a lot of time with, that you should let affect you. And I try to not call people out too much, but I will call out Mr. Mark Martindale back there. Now, all our elders are outstanding, but I tell you, every time that I talk to him, I don't care what we talk about, I come away encouraged. I come away in a better mood than when I started talking to him. And I think just about everybody in here could agree with that. That's a wonderful thing. Never underestimate how important that is. And, you know, looking at the youth group right now, we have 10 eighth graders. I don't know of another church that has that many of one class. They have a chance to have 9 friends that they grow up with in the church, and when they get older, that friendship is still going to be there. That's amazing. I think so many times that we overlook the relationships that we have in the church and how beautiful and wonderful of a thing that they are, that we love each other and that we are there for each other because we share the common values and the common belief and the love for God. That's a wonderful thing. And I start off just about every time when I speak saying, I'm glad to see you here. And I don't think I ever stop and realize how true that is. It is an encouragement to come to this building and see all of you. And like I said, I've been to places where it was not an encouragement. It was not exciting to go to church. It wasn't as much fun as it is here to see all of you. And I have been blown away with the love, the friendships, and everything that has been involved in working here to this point. And I'm very thankful for that. But always I like to end to some kind of a thought to say, work on this. So this week, work on loving the people around you. Work on loving the people who are in this building and showing it. Making sure that they know it. And if that's something that you struggle with, like I said, I know I do. I know that I'm not, that there's definitely something to be said about being overly affectionate, but I think I would be considered underly affectionate. And I know that is something that more than I struggle with. And if you think that is you, and you would like to start a change on that, or if you have heard the good news of Jesus Christ and seen the unbelievable, outstanding love that he had for us when he died on the cross, then we are here at this time for you to come now as we stand and sing.